This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Ateli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. China and North Korea's foreign ministers meet in Beijing, vowing deeper ties and backing multilateralism in a pushback against the US. South Korea scrambles to restore digital services after a data center fire crippled government websites. Only 10% back online, exposing deep flaws in the nation's digital infrastructure. Well, meantime, Seoul is opening its doors wider. A new visa-free policy for Chinese tourists kicks in just in time for Golden Week. And Japan lodges a protest with China, demanding Beijing halt ocean research in its exclusive economic zone off the Amami Islands, calling it unacceptable. The powdered Japanese green tea, known as matcha, has gone global. And now, a perfect storm is brewing in this teacup. Find out why. China and North Korea are deepening their ties to, as they say, protect multilateralism. Their foreign ministers are meeting in Beijing, vowing to increase cooperation and oppose hegemony, indicating a concerted effort to push back against the United States. Now, this is the second visit by North Korea's foreign minister in less than a month. Choe Son Hui delivered a message from leader Kim Jong-un, urging stronger relations to, quote, meet the demands of the times. Ms. Choe also met Premier Li Qiang, who said that China is ready to enhance strategic communication to safeguard common interests. Earlier this month, Chinese President Xi Jinping and the North Korean leader held their first summit in more than 6 years, pledging mutual support and enhanced cooperation. The two allies have had separate confrontations with the US, China over trade and strategic competition, and North Korea over its nuclear weapons program. Now, for more, we are joined by CNA's senior correspondent Tan Yuguan, live from Shanghai. Yuguan, first up, help us understand the nuances in this relationship. China and North Korea, they are longtime allies, but there have been some shifts in the relationship.
Yes, I mean, we recently saw, as you mentioned, Kim Jong-un prominently featured at China's Victory Day parade in September. And that's a very symbolic gesture, underscoring Beijing's readiness to highlight its ties with Pyongyang on the global stage. Now, the alliance between these two countries is very old, but it has not always been very steady. In recent years, Kim kind of leaned heavily towards Russia, supplying ammunition and offering support for its war in Ukraine. But with Russia having already drawn heavily on Pyongyang's resources and international pressure mounting on the Ukraine war, now Kim seems to be kind of rebalancing, turning against towards China. Now, what complicates the picture, of course, is North Korea's nuclear weapons program, the real elephant in the room. It is written into North Korea's constitution. Now, Kim Jong-un himself has repeatedly vowed never to give up on those arms, framing them as vital for self-defense. China, meanwhile, remains North Korea's biggest trading partner and its aid provider. But its official on the nuclear program is a lot more cautious. Now, at today's Chinese Foreign Ministry briefing, when asked whether Beijing supports Pyongyang's nuclear development, the spokesperson avoided a direct answer. Instead, he reiterated that China's policy on the Korean peninsula remains consistent to maintain peace, stability, and to encourage political resolution. The answer really underscores Beijing's balancing act, keeping close ties with its neighbor while being careful not to openly endorse North Korea's nuclear programs.
So, Yuguan, we've got North Korea soon to be marking the 80th anniversary of Pyongyang's ruling party. China, I believe, will be sending a representative. So what are some of the things we should be looking out for?
Well, for one, the 80th anniversary of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party is a major milestone for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Domestically, it's a chance to showcase strength and unity at a time when the country is under strain from sanctions and shortages. Foreign participation, especially from China, adds weight to that message. The key point to watch is who Beijing sends. Now, Xi Jinping himself did visit Pyongyang once in 2019, the first Chinese leader to do so in 14 years then. But since then, neither Premier Li Qiang nor many top-tier ministers, except for the third-ranking member of the Politburo, has set foot in North Korea. So if Beijing sends someone very senior this time, it would send out as a very strong endorsement, particularly a very senior Standing Committee member would send a strong signal of strong political support. A lower-ranking figure would show that China still values the ties, but would like to keep them at a more measured level. Now, observers are also watching for possible outcomes, whether the visit brings new pledges of food or fuel assistance, expanded trade, or even language about military cooperation. Now, that will show just how far Beijing and Pyongyang are prepared to align, as both face pressure from Washington. Beyond the substance, the optics alone do matter. China's presence at such a high-profile event is a reminder to the world that it still holds sway in Pyongyang, even as North Korea has drawn closer to Russia. Otelli?
Many thanks for that report. CNA's senior correspondent Han Yu-guan live from Shanghai. Now, in other news, South Korea is scrambling to restore digital services after a data center fire on Friday crippled government websites. The cause is still under probe, but investigators say it could be due to an exploding battery. As CNA's senior correspondent Lim Yun-suk reports, the slow recovery is exposing flaws in the country's digital system.
South Korea is rushing to bring key government services back online after outages caused by a fire at a data center. The disruptions have raised concerns about system backups and data security. Officials say 62 out of 647 affected systems have been restored as of Monday afternoon. But close to 100 systems destroyed in the blaze will need to be relocated.
다만 전소된 7-1 전산실에 96개 시스템은 바로 재가동이 쉽지 않은 상황입니다. 이에 따라 대구 센터의 민관 협력형 클라우드로 이전 복구를 추진하여 최대한 신속하게 대체 방안을 마련하겠습니다.
President Lee Jae-myung has ordered a thorough investigation into the fire, calling it an opportunity to upgrade the country's digital infrastructure and prevent future incidents. He told ministers to propose new budgets to prevent such accidents. With the Chuseok holiday season nearing, he warned of wider public inconvenience if systems are not restored quickly.
추석을 앞두고 우편 택배 금융 인형이 많아지는 시기인 만큼 관계 부처들은 국민의 불편과 혼란이 최소화될 수 있도록 생활 밀접 시스템의 신속한 복구 그리고 가동에 총력을 기울여 주기 바랍니다.
The government has already extended deadlines for tax payments due by the end of the month, aiming to restore services that affect daily life first. It's unknown when the system will be back up and fully running. Experts say it could take 2 to 4 weeks to fully restore the country's national data service, which serves as the cloud server for government ministries and databases across South Korea. Until then, South Korea, one of the world's most wired nations, will rely on manual processing where possible. Lim Yun-suk, CNA, Seoul.
Well, staying in South Korea, Chinese tourists may now enter the country without a visa. Seoul's latest visa-free scheme, which starts today, aims to boost tourism and consumer spending. Well, the program basically allows groups of at least 3 Chinese nationals traveling with approved agencies to stay in South Korea for up to 15 days without a visa. It runs through June 30th next year. The launch comes just in time for China's week-long National Day and Mid-Autumn Festival holiday, or the Golden Week. Merchants in Seoul's major shopping districts are preparing to welcome more visitors. Many have hired Chinese-speaking staff, introduced mobile payment services, and even added Chinese language menus at street food stalls.
한국인들이 직접 일상생활에서 체험하는 거를 이제 본인들도 경험하고 싶다. 이런 니즈가 많이 강화되고 이걸 반영해서 시장이라든지 혹은 어떤 지방 소도시에 좀 새로운 좀 한국 문화를 좀 더 경험할 수 있는 그런 일정이라든지 이런 거를 좀 상품에 담아서 좀 선보이고자 하는 부분들이 있습니다.
China has long been South Korea's biggest source of tourists. They made up nearly 29% of all foreign arrivals in the first half of this year. Now, with the new visa-free policy, officials are expecting more than 5 million Chinese visitors in 2025. Now, also on the visa front, American and South Korean officials are set to meet Tuesday for visa talks, weeks after a raid at that Hyundai plant in the U.S., which led to the arrests of hundreds of workers. South Korea's national security advisor, Wi Sung-lak, said that they hope to resolve issues with existing visa systems and design a new visa category. That's to create a better environment for Korean businesses in the U.S., where the right technical skill sets are not easy to find. The high-profile immigration raid at a battery facility in Georgia earlier this month resulted in dozens of arrested workers returning home to South Korea. Washington has said it regrets the raid. Typhoon Boaloi slammed into Vietnam earlier today, killing at least 11 people and leaving 20 others missing. State media reports that tens of thousands were evacuated to emergency shelters ahead of the storm. Officials say the typhoon packed winds of up to 133 kilometers per hour and caused storm surges with waves as high as 8 meters. More than 300,000 households lost power. The strong winds ripped roofs from homes and toppled concrete pillars. 4 coastal airports suspended operations, including Da Nang International Airport, with several flights rescheduled. Authorities have grounded all sea traffic in the affected regions.
Đánh mạnh quá ghe cộ nó banh hết trên rồi. Giờ ở đó cũng chịu chết thôi chứ về giờ em cố gắng bơi vào cho bằng được để kêu cứu hộ.
Boaloi made landfall early this morning in the northern coastal province of Ha Tin. It struck the Philippines earlier, killing at least 20 people and forcing around 23,000 families to flee their homes. Boaloi has weakened into a severe tropical storm and is now inching towards neighboring Laos. But heavy rains are forecast to continue in Vietnam through Wednesday, raising the risk of flash floods and landslides across northern and central provinces. The storm has damaged nearly 250 houses and cut off access to several areas so far. Vietnam's prime minister has deployed 100,000 troops and ordered the highest level of readiness in response. Over in China's Hainan province, transportation such as buses and high-speed rail services in Sanya are gradually resuming, but residents are still bracing for moderate to heavy rain in the coming days. The city issued its highest red alert for heavy rainfall over the weekend, as well as upgraded its emergency responses for flood and wind disasters. Well, time now for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, China announces dates for a key party meeting to map out social and economic development over the next 5 years. Plus, a look at how artificial intelligence is transforming cybersecurity, creating powerful new tools, but also posing a major risks for businesses and their leaders. Hello again. You're watching East Asia Tonight, and we've got Roland Lim right here with us with the very latest in business news. So Sony shares making waves today in Tokyo. Apparently shares of the new entity surged on the first day, but it wasn't your usual IPO. So tell us more.
Right, yeah, Sony's latest shakeup is turning heads with a major financial twist. No IPO, no usual fanfare, just a direct listing. The shares of Sony Financial ending their first trading day up 16%. The insurance and banking operator is a spin-off from Sony. It is the first partial spin-off in Japan, taking advantage of a 2023 tax change and the first direct listing in more than 2 decades. In a direct listing, a company lists on the stock exchange without a traditional IPO. Sony says it made the move to focus on its entertainment and technology business. It comes after reforms by Japan's government and the Tokyo Stock Exchange, which encourage spin-offs by offering tax breaks. Despite the strong demand, analysts caution that the new entity's life insurance unit is vulnerable to rising interest rates. That's as its holdings in long-term Japanese government bonds will weigh on its stock price. But Sony Financial says it expects to net more than $500 million in profits this fiscal year, and that's up more than 4% on year. China will hold a key meeting in late October to discuss the country's direction for the next 5 years. Top leaders will gather at the 4th plenum in Beijing from October 20th to 23rd. The party's top brass is set to deliberate on the country's 15th five-year plan, which will set policy goals for the half-decade starting next year. China has battled sluggish economic growth, high youth unemployment, and dwindling birth rates since the start of the ongoing 14th five-year plan. The plenum will be held around 1 week before President Xi Jinping heads for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in South Korea, where he is expected to meet U.S. counterpart Donald Trump on the sidelines. The plenum is also expected to see a shake-up of the Central Committee. Now, as at the end of September, 8 of its members have been implicated in corruption investigations, including 6 who have been detained. Looking at the mainland markets, Shanghai Composite ending the day 0.9% higher, Shenzhen doubling that thanks to tech counters. Hang Seng Index 1.9 in the green. South Korea says it can't afford the hefty price tag tied to its trade deal with Washington. Seoul is being asked to make an upfront investment of $350 billion as part of a deal to lower U.S. tariffs on Korean goods to 15% from 25%. National Security Advisor Wee Song-nak said that the number is simply beyond reach. The amount represents over 80% of South Korea's foreign reserves. The talks are now stuck on how the investment could be structured. Seoul is pushing for loans or a currency swap, but Washington is reportedly insisting on cash. Similar concerns being highlighted in Japan. One of the frontrunners in the lead to Japan's ruling party said that a renegotiation of the country's trade deal with the U.S. could be on the table. Sanae Takaichi says that Tokyo should be willing to renegotiate the agreement if the terms don't serve Japan's interests. Her concern centers on a $550 billion investment fund that Japan is expected to commit under the agreement. She says Japan must stand its ground to get a fair trade deal. The remarks comes just days before the Liberal Democratic Party picks its next leader, with 5 candidates in the race. Australian telco giant Optus said it was hit by another network outage that disrupted emergency calls more than a week after a similar interruption. Thousands in New South Wales were affected by the disruption, which lasted more than 9 hours. Now, Optus has apologized for the latest outage. The company said it is investigating the cause. They confirmed with police that all callers who attempted to contact the emergency services are okay. Earlier this month, Optus suffered a similar outage that impacted hundreds across South Australia, Western Australia and the Northern Territory for at least 10 hours. Users at that time were not able to make emergency calls, and 4 deaths have since been linked to that outage. A Jaguar Land Rover is racing to secure emergency funding after a cyber attack crippled its operations worldwide. The subsidiary of India's Tata Motors is seeking $2.7 billion from global banks. A major cyber attack earlier this month forced the carmaker to halt production at its plants in the UK, Slovakia, Brazil, and India. Sources say that Standard Chartered, Citigroup, and Japan's Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group have agreed to provide short-term credit lines. The 18-month loan will be backed by guarantees and later syndicated to a wider group of lenders. The new funding is separate from a previously secured $2 billion loan guaranteed by the UK Export Finance. The cyber attack has disrupted supply chains, leaving some suppliers waiting for payments. While Jaguar Land Rover has restored systems to process invoices and to resume vehicle sales, the company warns it will take time to return to full capacity. A partial manufacturing is expected to be restarted by October the 1st.
Now, another thing that the Optus outage and Jaguar Land Rover cyber attack have in common is system risk and the concerns over AI usage. So, Roland, just like everything else, AI is a powerful tool. It is useful but dangerous at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, attackers have used AI to churn out slick phishing emails, deep fake voices that sound real, and they can do it at scale. So this means that the more people click, the likelihood of credential leaks and ransomware into a company's IT system. And that's exactly what happened with Jaguar Land Rover, the fact that it broke through their barriers, their firewalls, and then it stole their order systems, as well as affecting their dealerships, as well as parts suppliers.
And what about Optus then? I mean, what lessons did they learn?
Well, remember, telecoms is a very highly automated, software-driven business. In the case of Optus, well, when complex systems fail, they fail dramatically. AI, I have to say, wasn't the reason for Optus's latest outage. But I want to bring back the case study of when it had a nationwide failure back in November 2023. That wasn't blamed on AI. It was traced to actually configuration error. Some of the routing rules that they were updating, think of them as like digital traffic signs, they wouldn't match up with the edge routers, and think of that as like, traffic junctions. So that's when traffic stopped and basically the system failed. But that single configuration error actually caused payment systems, trains, emergency hotlines to stop working. So that's a very big example of how when automation goes wrong, and if it's AI augmented, well, you could imagine what could happen.
So if I'm reading this correctly, you're saying that AI isn't always a spark, but it certainly adds fuel to the fire.
You're right. So on the attack side, AI raises the volume, it raises the precision. And if you are talking about the operational side of things, well, AI can amplify the mistakes that you make unless you have robust safeguards in place and you have humans in the loop.
Okay, so for our viewers out there, help us understand, how does this impact ordinary households or even small businesses?
Well, in three ways. I mean, look, the more service bots, more self-automated portals you have, it'll work fine unless things go wrong, and then you have the knock-on effects. If your banks, your doctors, or your courier service, or your car dealership, if their supply chains are affected, well, then your services or your deliveries are going to be delayed. And then, of course, if the scams are actually sharper, these days, emails, texts, voice, video messages can seem really real, well, then you've got to basically level up your defenses. I'm talking about pass keys. You got to have your MFAs, multi-factor authentications on everything. And then, of course, if you're doing money or data transfers, you got to make sure that, well, there is a separate channel of requests as well. You just can't rely on an email or on a WhatsApp message these days.
Yeah, I definitely need to boost my cyber defenses. Thanks so very much for that business update, Roland there speaking to us. All right, on that note, let's go for a short break now. But coming up next on East Asia tonight, a poll shows Japan's former Internal Affairs Minister Sanae Takaichi as frontrunner for the ruling Liberal Democratic Party's presidential race.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous
Fiery
potential.
speeches, defiance, and a walkout. Drama at this year's United Nations General Assembly as leaders mark the UN's 80th anniversary with speeches about a world in crisis. This is East Asia tonight, and here are the headlines you're following. China and North Korea hail stronger ties to, as they say, protect multilateralism. Their foreign ministers meet in Beijing. It's the North Korean diplomat's second visit in less than a month. South Korea in a scramble to bring digital services back online after a data center fire last Friday crippled government websites. And Chinese tourists may enter South Korea visa-free starting today. Seoul is looking to earn more Chinese tourist dollars to boost sluggish consumer demand ahead of an APEC summit in November. Now, wanted Hong Kong activist Nathan Law has been denied entry into Singapore. The Ministry of Home Affairs said his entry was not in Singapore's national interests. Law fled Hong Kong in 2020 and is wanted by the authorities there for national security offences. A media report said that he was here to attend a closed-door invitation-only event. MHA said that he was referred for questioning and immigration checks before being denied entry and placed on the earliest flight back to San Francisco on Sunday. Although Law had a valid visa, MHA stressed that all visa holders remain subject to further security assessments at the point of entry. A 32-year-old activist who helped lead Hong Kong's pro-democracy umbrella revolution in 2014 has an active warrant of arrest issued by Hong Kong police. He has been living in exile in the United Kingdom since 2020, after Beijing imposed its sweeping national security law, and remains one of the most high-profile figures wanted by Hong Kong authorities. The trial of the alleged mastermind of a $7 billion cross-border investment fraud is set to begin in London today. While the case could set a precedent for how UK authorities handle compensation for crypto-related financial crimes. The defendant is Chinese national Tian Zhimin. She allegedly masterminded the Ponzi scheme that defrauded nearly 130,000 investors in China. That scheme collapsed in 2017 after China's blanket ban on cryptocurrency activities. Qian fled to the UK that year after laundering the scheme's proceeds into Bitcoin, now worth around $7 billion. Experts say the cross-border nature of the case makes Qian's prosecution an uphill struggle. The alleged crime occurred in China while Qian was arrested in the UK. London and Beijing do not have an extradition treaty. Japan says it has lodged a protest with China to stop Beijing's ocean research activities in Tokyo's exclusive economic zones. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi said today that the conducting such marine research without Japan's consent is unacceptable. Tokyo's protest comes after a Chinese vessel was spotted in the country's southwest on Sunday, some 380 kilometers west of Japan's Amami Islands. The Chinese ship Xiangyang Hong 22 reportedly extended a wire-like object into the ocean. It left the waters about 3 hours later. A Kyodo News survey shows Japan's former Internal Affairs Minister Sanae Takaichi is seen as the front-runner to lead the country's ruling Liberal Democratic Party. 34.4% of LDP supporters polled backed Ms. Takaichi, while Farm Minister Shinjiro Koizumi trails not too far behind at 29.3%. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi is in third place at 19.5%. A survey suggests that no candidate would win an outright majority in the first round, meaning a runoff vote between the top two contenders on the same day is likely. The leadership election will see each of the LDP's 295 Diet members cast a vote. Another 295 votes will be determined by ballots of its rank-and-file members. And for policy priorities, party supporters are hoping for the new leader to address. Measures to combat inflation comes up top at 28.4%. That's followed by diplomacy and security, and concerns on the social security front, such as pensions. The 4th October leadership poll comes after outgoing Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said that he would step down following the party's historic loss of the upper house in July. Now some headlines from media outlets in East Asia. Kyodo News says a fire broke out today at a demolition site near Tokyo's Haneda Airport, burning about 900 square meters of the roof. No injuries are reported and flight operations were unaffected. A Yonhap News report says that a major update on South Korea's most popular messaging app, Kakao Talk, has sparked a torrent of complaints. Users say the new look is showing too many ads and unwanted updates from friends when the app's primary job is to be a messenger. And on the South China Morning Post, an all-you-can-eat hot pot restaurant in Hong Kong has said sorry after a video showing diners confronted for sneaking uncooked food into bags was posted online. The restaurant said the video was meant for staff training and not for public release. Looking beyond East Asia, Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul has laid out his minority government's plan in Parliament, focusing on quick moves to revive the economy. This comes just days after being sworn in to lead the country's third administration in 2 years. Mr. Anutin also set the stage to hold early elections next year as part of a deal he made with the opposition People's Party. CNA's Saksitsa Sambat has more.
The policy speech of a new Thai Prime Minister to Parliament has become somewhat of an annual tradition, given that we have changed governments 3 times in the past 2 years. And the new government of Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul is even more of an unusual one, given that it's an interim minority government. They are pledging to stick around for only 4 months before dissolving Parliament and triggering snap elections next year. Subsequently, his mandatory maiden policy speech to lawmakers is focusing on short-term measures, addressing cost of living issues, declining tourism numbers, and the impact of the US tariffs. Also, the simmering border conflict with Cambodia was a topic, with Mr. Anutin pledging to resolve it quickly and peacefully while, quote, protecting national sovereignty, end quote. And finally, Mr. Anutin also pledged to support a public referendum on constitutional amendments. There's some skepticism whether or not Mr. Anutin's government can actually achieve something significant in such a short amount of time. Even the quickest economic package will take a couple of precious weeks to take effect. There's also skepticism whether they will keep their promise of not holding on to power for longer than these 4 months. But Prime Minister Anutin has been insisting that he will at almost every opportunity, and today was no exception.
ขอนับวันที่1 ตุลาคมคือวันแรกนะครับแล้วท่านนับไป4 เดือนก็คือ31 มกราคมยุบสภาแน่นอนครับอันนี้ถือเป็นพันธะระหว่างพรรคที่ลงนามใน MOA กับทางพรรคประชาชน
Opposition leader Nattapong Panyawut, whose People's Party have supplied the necessary votes for Mr. Anutin to become Prime Minister without joining the government, is one of those that will keep reminding him to keep his end of the bargain.
สิ่งที่พวกเราอยากเห็นจากท่านนายกรัฐมนตรีนั้นจะไม่ใช่แค่การที่ท่านจะต้องเคารพต่อข้อตกลงที่ทำไว้กับพรรคประชาชนแต่ผมครับอยากเห็นท่านนายกเคารพต่อกระบวนการยุติธรรมและเคารพต่อพ่อแม่พี่น้องประชาชนผู้ที่เป็นเจ้าของประเทศและผู้ที่เป็นผู้ทรงอำนาจสูงสุดในประเทศนี้ครับ
The policy speech and the subsequent general debate in Parliament is giving us a taste of what the general election campaign next year could look like, where the board is being reshuffled, and where the Boom Jai Thai is looking to convert these 4 months in office into a new mandate of 4 years. That is, if Mr. Anutin keeps his word. Saksit Saya Sombat, CNA Bangkok.
Fiery speeches, defiance, and even a walkout. This year marked the 80th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. But celebrations were subdued as world leaders descended on New York to deliver emotionally charged addresses on the world's crises. A criticism of the UN was also in focus as US President Donald Trump unleashed his contempt for the world body on day one.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential. But it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action.
Topping the issues, the war in Gaza, where countries and delegates showed their objection to Israel's conduct in the conflict by walking out when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered his speech before the General Assembly. The leader remained defiant, reiterating that Israel must, quote, finish the job against Hamas. Leaders also shared views on the Russia-Ukraine war, a shifting multilateral order, climate change, and artificial intelligence. The divisive tone of this year's gathering has some questioning the future direction of the organization and the role of the US within it. Well, we spoke with Sedomir Nostrovich, a professor of geopolitics at the ESSEC Business School, Asia Pacific, and he began by discussing the standout moments at this year's diplomatic gathering.
People will remember the speech from Donald Trump. After that, we have many other speeches. Of course, we had Benjamin Netanyahu, we have Vladimir Zelensky. But close to us, we also have the President Prabowo, who was there. So Indonesia was not there for quite a long time. But this time, the President Prabowo decided to go there. And he also delivered a very interesting speech concerning the future of Gaza, but also in order to have some security measures for Israel. when the time comes and when there is peace there.
Okay, and Professor, you earlier said there is a lot to be done. And of course, one theme that came up repeatedly, including in Singapore's address, is Security Council reform. We've heard this call for a number of years now. Why is reforming the council so notoriously difficult? What makes so resistant to change than any other UN body?
You're absolutely right. There are many calls in order to reform the Security Council, and even in some European countries have floated the idea to share their seat there. For instance, France sharing with Germany, or another country sharing with Japan. So for the moment, this did not materialize. And I believe that it doesn't materialize because the other three big players, again, the United States, Russia, and China, are not ready for that. I suspect that the United Kingdom and France would be in favor of some kind of change, rather temporarily or permanently, but the other three big powers are not ready. So for the moment, it is impossible to envision any reform concerning the Security Council.
Professor, another idea which has been floated again, time and again, is a veto override, where a supermajority by ANGA members, maybe it's 2/3, maybe it can go even as high as 90% or more, which either cancels a veto or authorizes action over the objections of the dissenting country, the P5 country. Why hasn't this idea gained any traction, or is the idea of multilateralism so far gone that it's dead in the water?
Yeah, you're right. So for the moment, the P5 members, they enjoy a right. And this right is completely illegitimate when we consider the other countries in the world. So other countries, even big countries such as India or such as Japan or Brazil, they would say that it is impossible to continue this way. But for the moment, that's the situation that we have. They were floating the idea concerning the 3/3 or even the 4th or even more as a majority in the General Assembly. So it can happen that the General Assembly is adopting a resolution, but in that case, either the 5 members of the Security Council who have the veto right, they choose either to abstain or to vote for the resolution. But if they use the veto right, we cannot adopt it. So there is a possibility that they abstain, but again, it is in the power to decide about that. And changing the rules of the United Nations and the Security Council also requires their own assent. So that is, we are in the stalemate for that.
Iran has condemned the reinstatement of UN sanctions, calling them unjustifiable and legally baseless. The Foreign Ministry warned it will defend its national rights and interests. The sanctions follow the collapse of months-long nuclear negotiations and mark an escalation in tensions.
The United Nations has reinstated an arms embargo and other sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program. It follows a process triggered by European powers that Tehran has warned will be met with a harsh response. Britain, France and Germany initiated the return of sanctions on Iran at the UN Security Council over accusations it had violated a 2015 deal that aimed to stop it from developing a nuclear bomb. Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons. The end of the decade-long nuclear deal is likely to worsen tensions in the Middle East, just months after Israel and the US bombed Iranian nuclear sites. Russia has disputed the return of UN sanctions. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told reporters at the UN that the move was illegal. The European powers had offered to delay the move conditionally, to allow for talks on a long-term deal. But diplomats said reassurances were lacking in the end, and a Russian and Chinese push to delay the return of sanctions failed in a Security Council vote on Friday. On Sunday, Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, said Iran considered the move to be illegal and that no countries were obligated to comply. We believe that our right to uranium enrichment is still recognised under international law today, he said. On Saturday, Tehran recalled its ambassadors to Britain, France and Germany for consultations. Iran's economy is already struggling with crippling US sanctions, reimposed since 2018, after Donald Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal during his first term. The reimposed sanctions involve an arms embargo, bans on uranium enrichment and reprocessing, as well as activities with nuclear-capable missiles. It also involves a global asset freeze, certain travel bans, and would hit the Iranian energy sector.
Coming up on East Asia tonight, the 2025 World Expo in Osaka breaks even, crossing the 22 million visitor mark with 2 weeks left to go for the event. And what's touted to be the largest indoor ski resort opens in southern China. The 2025 World Expo in Osaka closes in about 2 weeks, and organizers say the number of visitors crossed the 22 million mark on Saturday. Well, that's the figure needed for the event to break even. And more than 200,000 people a day have been visiting the expo at Osaka's Yumeshima. If that continues, visitor numbers will exceed the 2005 Expo in Aichi Prefecture. A cap on daily entry is in place that requires visitors to register for a specific day and time of entry. Now, the expo has seen overwhelming crowds with reservation slots for its final day on 13th of October almost fully booked. Queues for some popular pavilions, such as France and Italy's, could be hours long. China has opened a new regional high-speed rail line, its longest so far this year, linking Shenyang, the capital city of Liaoning province, to the scenic Changbai Mountains in neighboring Jilin. Trains on the 430-kilometer line run at top speed of 350 kilometers per hour. A one-way trip from capital Beijing to Changbai Mountains now takes about 4 hours and 30 minutes, shaving an hour and a half off the previous fastest time. Officials say the newly completed line would help speed up urbanization in Liaoning as well as Jilin provinces, while driving development of tourism along the route. Separately, the first high-speed train linking cities Xiangyang to Jingmen in central China's Hubei province was also launched over the weekend. The 116-kilometer line cuts the original hour-plus travel time to less than 30 minutes. China first devised its nationwide high-speed rail plan back in 2004. Years of rapid expansion has made its network the world's largest by a large margin, at about 50,000 kilometers long as of this year. It has a goal to reach 60,000 kilometers by 2030. Parts of East Asia have been hit by record-breaking heat waves this year. Winter is more than 2 months away, but for those hoping to cool off earlier, there is relief in the form of a snowy ski adventure. A massive ski resort opens today in the southern Chinese tech hub of Shenzhen. Huafa Ice and Snow World, covering some 100,000 square meters, or about 11 football fields, is the world's largest and has 5 slopes to choose from for the novice to the pro. The site is about 20% larger than the previous record holder, the Wanda Indoor Ski Resort in China's northern province of Harbin. Now, for a closer look at the resort, do check out CNA correspondent Melody Chan's preview on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. Turning to sports now, North Korean wrestlers have received a hero's welcome in Pyongyang after a 7-medal haul at the 2025 World Wrestling Championships in Croatia. Footage released by state media KCNA showed the country's athletes posing for photos at the Pyongyang airport as officials received them. Outside, they were cheered on for their efforts. Overall, the group came in 4th on the medal tally. They secured 3 gold, 2 silver, 2 bronze medals, as well as a women's freestyle team cup for finishing in 2nd place after Japan. And in Japanese sumo wrestling, Yokozuna Onosato has clinched his 5th Emperor's Cup at the Autumn Tournament Championship, holding off fellow Yokozuna Hoshiryu on the final day of the 15-day event. Hoshoryu on the right, trailing by 1 win, swiftly pushed Onosato off the stage, leaving the pair tied at 13 wins and 2 losses and triggering a playoff match. In a final scheduled bout, Hoshoryu secured a hold of his opponent's belt and tried an overarm throw, but Onosato stood his ground to execute a so-called crush-out. This is the first playoff match between Grand Sumo champions in 16 years. Onosato's tournament win on Sunday also marks his first since being promoted to Yokozuna. Now, from ancient tea ceremonies to your local cafe, matcha has gone global. But as the world's appetite grows, so has the price for this beverage. Now, a perfect storm of shortages, tariffs, and demand is hitting tea lovers right in their wallets.
It begins as a quiet moment, a scoop of green powder, a brisk whisk, a time-honored ceremony to produce a drink to promote calm and reflection. Hailed as a superfood, matcha has become well known for its health benefits, turning into a global obsession.
I've always been saying matcha is growing, but certainly within the last 1 or 2 years there has been exponential, unprecedented growth in demand.
The powdered green tea, once reserved for Japanese ceremonies, now fuels lattes, desserts and even skincare. From Kyoto to California, the matcha flavor has seeped into many products, but that success is causing a big problem.
There is limited supply, not due to lack of innovation or ambition, but simply there's only so much tea grown in Japan.
Japan produces the finest matcha, but while production has tripled, it is still not enough. This year, crops were hit by bad weather, labor shortages making caring for the delicate plants harder, and the demand hasn't slowed. In San Francisco, this tea house is feeling it.
Our matcha drinks, we sell them in the hundreds every day, and we go through many hundreds of kilograms every month or two, so it's a lot of matcha.
Now multiply that volume across the world. Supplies down, demand rising, the inevitable result, more expensive tea.
I have matcha every morning. It's actually my go-to drink. It's kind of how I start the day. What have I noticed about the pricing? It's definitely started to go up, especially if you want to maintain the quality.
U.S. tariffs are adding even more pressure on retailers.
The cost increases that we have been discussing up to now have been purely derived from supply and demand situation and the shortage of available leaf against the sudden extreme popularity of matcha. Additional to that, we will also certainly see an increase in price due to tariffs.
Cafe owners say that profit margins are becoming unsustainable.
Your local cafe is going to have to charge more for that latte. The cost of the material is going to go up dramatically for them. And of course, if we want to support them and continue to enjoy this really original and very special beverage, then yeah, we all have to put our money where our mouth is, as it were.
So what started as a centuries-old ceremony is now a modern luxury. Matcha hasn't lost its charm, but as more of the world embrace it, it's becoming harder to afford. So those who can't live without their cuppa will have to be prepared to pay for a steeper sip.
And this wraps up Monday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Thanks for watching.